Cinematic Shuffle has shuffled once again. But not really. We'll get into that in a second. But if you were around last week, you would have noticed that I never gave you the 3 hints that I usually give you on Twitter or as a YouTube short, because I completely forgot to do that. So even though that this movie, Dan in Real Life, was on that list for the Cinematic Shuffle at some point, it wasn't randomly selected by fate, but rather, I personally decided to watch it last night because I love this movie. I consider it to actually be my personal favorite film of all time, believe it or not. Let's get cracking. Dan in Real Life stars Steve Carell as Dan Burns, a newspaper columnist and widower that takes his 3 daughters to a family reunion in Rhode Island. This is where he meets a beautiful woman that he immediately falls head over heels desperately in love with. There's just one problem with that though. This woman, he discovers, is actually his brother's new girlfriend, who is also spending the family reunion with everybody else. Let the awkward hilarity ensue. So ever since this film came out 16 years ago, which that alone sounds insane by the way, I really have decided that it was my favorite film of all time, and that has not changed. I don't consider it to be a masterpiece or anything. I don't have it rated at a 100% score just because it is my favorite. I realize that it's mostly just a typical but well-made rom-com at the end of the day, but there's just something about it and the soul that it has that connects me to the characters, to the story, and to the attitude of the film overall. When the film first came out, I was not yet a father. I had only just graduated from high school the year before, but I knew Steve Carell's character of Dan and his sense of self, his sense of grand romanticism and awkwardness around the opposite sex, especially in an unrequited love scenario, was literally me. It was basically a mirror image of how I normally act. I mean, this is how I would respond in his shoes. This is how I would be if I was a single father. This is my sense of humor. He's a writer. I'm a writer. He's awkward, so am I. He's funny in a very sad kind of way, and I've been told I'm the same way. And now that I'm a father, you can add that to the list, making this even more important to me at the end of the day, and something that I cherish. I watch this several times a year, especially when I feel the need to have my spirits lifted. No other movie out there has done a better job making me feel better than this. It's also why, to this day, Steve Carell is one of my favorite actors out there. He has range. He can basically do it all. He doesn't always, but he can if he so wants to. I'm actually shocked to see that I haven't reviewed it on YouTube before, given how often I really do watch it. But that does make sense. When anything is this near and dear to your heart, giving it a rating or a critique just doesn't come naturally. I avoided rating Star Wars for so long for the same exact reason. I never wanted to give those movies anything less than 100% because I feel like I would be doing them a disservice. I grew over that fear though, as I did now with Dan in Real Life, but I really do love it, even if I don't rate it 100%. Even from a technical vantage point, this film is just so extremely gentle and subtle with the way that things are executed, but they're all technically really, really good. The cinematography of Rhode Island in particular is super gentle, but you feel that warmth, the closeness and familiarity as if you yourself grew up in that state and you know it by heart. The music, entirely composed by singer-songwriter Sondra Lerche, is, at least to me, iconic and an example of a soundtrack that I've gone out of my way to buy and listen to on its own, which is massive praise. I love the music. The narrative plot is very typical for a rom-com like this, and yet the way that it chooses to approach the events, or I guess the obstacles, I thought was great. Steve Carell's character Dan, at one point in a very, very funny scene, tells this woman that he's gonna go out of his way to make himself look unattractive. And as funny as that scene was, it kind of helps to really showcase the obstacles of the narrative, which were to fight against all odds, not to go after the one that you feel the most right about, even though nature is running its course and it's pulling you two together all the same, because sometimes there's just nothing you can do to help it. no matter how much you try. This film has heart, it's got soul, its sense of family dynamic is extremely strong. You literally feel everybody's chemistry together, and this is a massively big family. There's a lot of people in it. Some people hate Dane Cook, by the way. I don't necessarily, but even if you do, I think that there's a lot of people that would love his role here as Dan's brother. There's just a lot going on in the film in both a technical, unbiased perspective as well as bias. Because no, nothing is in your face good from a technical level, but rather all under the surface, all very subtle, all very soft, but it is there. Because of that, I have a lot of hard time finding many faults with the film at all. No, again, I didn't score it a perfect 100% rating, but it does kind of come close to that at an A letter grade, final overall score of 95%. You'll notice my bias score is at that perfect 100% rating because that is how I feel about it. But it's still a very well-crafted film from a technical vantage point as well. And for most people, I could see it being a hidden gem because there wasn't a ton of great marketing for it, if I remember correctly. Like, people knew it existed, but nobody was really crawling over themselves to check it out. But I do highly recommend it anyway. Guys, have you seen Dan in real life? If not, it is currently streaming over on Disney Plus, so please give it a watch if you haven't seen it. If you have, please let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next installment for the Cinematic Shuffle. And until then, peace out.